How is everyone doing today? Welcome back to another episode of The Banker Next Door. I'm your host, Dr. Joe Berquist. Today, we're going to be doing another bank CEO interview. I have the CEO, Peter Stenehjem from First International Bank and Trust is going to be joining me here shortly. And I think everyone is really going to like this story because it's not only a story of a very old and historic bank in the country, but it's also a story of family business. And Peter is fourth generation running this bank. And we got a lot of great things there, but they also have some very interesting products that we're going to talk about today. So with no further ado, I bring Peter in. Peter, how are you doing today, sir?
Hey, great to be on. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, thank you so much for taking some time to be with us here this morning.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Should be a fun chat anyway, talking about, all things banking, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's what we're all about here on the channel. That's what we love. So if you could kick us off here, I know this bank has a very rich history, and it's not just the history of the bank, it's also a family history. So I was hoping that you could just kind of kick us off here by telling us a little bit about the history of the bank and undoubtedly a little bit of the history of your family as it goes along with that.
No, appreciate that. Well, thanks again for having me on, Dr. Joe. And yeah, it's always fun to talk about both the bank and my family just because they're so intertwined. And so just maybe a quick backstory. So our family, last name Stenehjem, our family immigrated from Norway, came over to the upper Midwest, ended up out in Western North Dakota during the Homestead Act, opportunity for free land. There was 9 brothers, 2 sisters. 2 of the family members thought that this small town needed a bank. And so they formed together the capital to do so. At that point in time, back in 1910, it took about $15,000 to start a bank. So, fast forward into today's money, I don't think 25 million would even probably get you a bank. But back in 1910, it took about $15,000. So they started the bank. Our bank was founded in Western North Dakota, a little town called Arnegard, North Dakota. So kind of right on the Montana border. We were a small town bank in Arnegard. We were founded as the Farmer State Bank of Arnegard up until the 1930s. And so in the 1930s, you had the bank holiday. There was 19 banks in McKenzie County. And during the bank holiday, they closed down all the banks to reevaluate if they could open back up. Fortunately for us, we were the only one to survive. So of the 19 banks, now we're down to 1 in the county. And my relatives, worked very hard to make sure that that happened, as you can imagine. But also at that point in time, we decided to move to the county seat, which is Watford City, North Dakota. We changed our name to First International Bank and Trust. A lot of people think, like, why do we have the word international in there? Just because we are a family-owned bank. And so, quick backstory there. Because of the homesteading, a lot of our customers are raising certified seed potatoes. They're selling these seed potatoes all over the country, frankly, all over the world. And our bank was dealing with international transactions, international bills of lading. And we thought, hey, having the word international in our name might help our customers. And so that's where the name came up with. But the bank, as you mentioned, is still in my family. So fast forward to today. So First International Bank and Trust, over 115 years later. Spirit definitely hasn't changed, but we've grown significantly. So it took us 100 years to get to the first billion in total assets, and we hit that back in 2010. Fast forward to today, we're about 5.5 billion on average, I guess. So we've seen some pretty significant growth over the past 15 years as well. Our bank, we cross a couple states now. So we're in North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, as well as down in Arizona. And we've been in the Phoenix market since the early 90s. And so my dad moved back in the 1980s. He was the one that really started to propel our growth and started growth and expansion. We started buying some banks during the S&L crisis, organically grew, and just continued to, do some bolt-on acquisitions every once in a while, but most of that has been organic. But we've had the opportunity to hire a lot of great people, expand into some great markets, and it's been really fun to see, who our bank is today. But we're still privately held just by my immediate family. So my dad recently transitioned to chairman, and then I took over the role of CEO as of January 1. But I also have my brother Eric is active in our Phoenix market. He's our chief transformation officer. And then I have mom and 2 sisters. And so my sister Kira is a little bit more on the PR marketing side, as is my mom. Then my youngest sister Kristen is a medical doctor in Chicago right now. So that kind of makes up the family as well as the ownership group, I guess, if that's a quick history anyway about FIBT.
No, I love it. I mean, Peter, it's such an interesting story because not again, it's great that your family is so involved in the business, but it's also just interesting because it's multi generational, and it's such a fascinating story. I mean, just to hear about what you were talking about there during the Great Depression, and I believe that was in 1933 when
Yeah,
President
1933,
Roosevelt did the
1934.
yeah, and when what I mean when President Roosevelt did the bank holiday. I think that was 33, 34, right in there when he did it. So it's just, again, fascinating history, just really interesting how the your bank grew and things unfolded over time. So I really appreciate you giving everybody that backstory because I love it. I love that kind of stuff, and I think a lot of our listeners just love to hear how a lot of banks have gotten to where they've gotten over the years. So again, great stuff.
Well, it's
Uh,
kind of interesting too, because you
yeah.
think about like, 30s are pretty tough, Great Depression. A lot of us more so reference, the Great Recession, 2008, 10, that kind of era. That's when I first started full time in banking. And I'll say, like, looking back at our minutes, which we still have all of our old minute books, and my dad has read them thoroughly. The 30s is way worse. We'll say that. So it's just kind of wild to think about all of the, if you think 115 years of history, there's just a lot of economic cycles and things happening in the country that a bank has to sustain. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty amazing. You brought up a really interesting thing there. So you guys actually have minute books that you can go back to and actually see what the thoughts were of your predecessors back in that time period. I mean that's pretty cool. That's pretty wild.
And they were handwritten back then. And I'll say the penmanship back then compared to a lot of us now, way different. That's for sure. I wish I had some of those skills where I had that good of handwriting still today. I'll say that.
Oh, yeah, no, that's a whole. We could get into a whole long conversation about that. I could talk for about how people back in the day had much better vocabulary, much better penmanship, but we'll save that for another time. So,
Another
uh,
podcast.
but yeah, exactly. But hey, I wanted to run in real quick. So First International Bank and Trust, you guys have a number of entrepreneurial ventures. Can you tell us a little bit about that aspect of the business?
Yeah, I think just, being community bankers at heart, number one, you want to see, the towns that you're in be successful. And especially where we grew up in Watford City, part of being a small town banker at the time was just helping keep that small town alive and making sure that, business continued to thrive, as well as invest in entrepreneurs to continue to see, Watford City be successful. We had a little help. So Watford is the dead center of the Bakken oil boom. When I was growing up, our town was about 2,500 people. Now there's 2,500 kids in the school district, and it's grown pretty significantly. But that being said, when we were experiencing some pretty significant growth within the bank, we needed to build a new headquarters in Watford City, and it took my dad about 10 years to work on it. So he acquired essentially 15 buildings on Main Street, roughly an entire city block, but he never wanted to see these businesses close. And so he would acquire their building, work with them to relocate. And then eventually we're able to, tear a lot of those structures down. We built our new headquarters. And within that, we knew the community needed a couple things. One of it was a great restaurant, a great place to eat, which unfortunately the one they had previous burned down. And then also we were kind of diehard movie fans. And so we needed a movie theater, which we didn't have. And then we were looking between, a good banquet space. And so as we built this new bank building, we also incorporated a little bit more of a community aspect to it. And we were hoping just to be, renters. We wanted to find a tenant that would take this over, and we just couldn't find the right partners. And ultimately, we started up a restaurant, and we're kind of trying to figure out like what plays off of banking. And we're like, oh, bank robberies, Old West, West North Dakota. So we named our restaurant Outlaws Bar and Grill. And so we started a restaurant in 2006 called Outlaws, steak and seafood type place. Owned and operated that. Kicked off a movie theater, with the latest showings, then put a huge banquet space in that. And then, we ran that for a period of time. And then also, the oil boom started hitting, obviously demand really ticked up where we had, 45-minute wait times for lunch, an hour and a half for dinner. And we started thinking like, hey, this small town, like we need some more amenities here. And I think, you get my dad, brother, and I together, and, we sat around and probably had a happy hour or two, and we're like, we should start a brewery. And so, Stenehjem then prevailed from that. And so our last name Stenehjem translates to stone home in Norwegian. And so we wanted a good craft pasta, craft pizza place, sent our restaurant management group all over the country to kind of formulate, a great, oven baked type pizza or a brick oven pizza. And then instead of just having a brewery, we spun up a restaurant with it. So we started Stenehjem Brewing Company, which is a production brewery, has a canning line, all those things, and also put a pizza place restaurant with it. Off of that, we did Wildcard Coffee and Cream, kind of a dessert coffee place. And then at the time, we had some friends that were starting to see some success with a company called JL Beers, which is more of a craft burger, craft beer, French fry type place. We ended up being a franchisee of that, built one of those. Spun up a couple more Outlaws, a couple more Stenehjem. So as we built some new banks, we incorporated both banking and restaurants into our bank building. So when we built a new bank in Bismarck, we put a Stenehjem Brewing Company in there, did some cool patios, water features, stuff like that. And so restaurant side is one aspect. And then our family, we've dabbled a little bit in some real estate, some venture capital, some private equity, some other investments just with some friends and family. And so I've been a little bit of a developer, a restaurateur, but just ultimately our family is very entrepreneurial. And so relating it back to banking. And so when I'm sitting with a client and I'm asking, margin questions about a restaurant, or I'm asking more real estate development questions, it comes from a little bit more of a source of experience. And I probably have a little bit deeper questioning. So I think it's actually probably made me a much better banker just because I have, experiences on the family side where we're owning and operating these businesses as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, I think that's one of the very fascinating aspects to your family and this bank and everything that you guys are doing. And I think it's a really cool story about how you guys have really helped not only just to develop the bank, but develop the town that sits at the very heart of the bank that you guys operate, which again, I think is just really cool and really interesting. And I agree with your sentiment at the end there. I think that no doubt all of that hands-on experience has given you a very different perspective and can no doubt help you when dealing with a lot of clients. When those clients come in and they need you to understand their business and understand what they're doing and what their problems are, you've got a front row seat. You know exactly what it is that they're dealing with. So that's it. Yeah. Oh yeah. It's great stuff. But okay, if we could switch gears here for a minute, because I want to get into perhaps the strategy and the products that are really at the heart of what your bank does. So a big part of First International Bank and Trust strategy is banking as a service, also known as BaaS. So with products such as CodaPay and Cavenue, can you tell us a little bit about this strategy and these products?
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to. So, first and foremost, FIBT. I mean, we're a business bank. We're a $5.5 billion bank. We, obviously have a huge business centered around, doing loans, deposits, treasury management, both on the retail mortgage side as well as your traditional business banking. That being said, that entrepreneurial by nature, kind of came up once again. And so we acquired a company, rebranded it CodaPay, and CodaPay is a third-party payment processor. So they do debit, credit, ACH transactions. And this is where we always kind of talk. FIBT probably punches above our weight class because of this capability. So CodaPay last year moved $103 billion, and we did roughly 60 million transactions. And so if you think about moving over $100 billion in a given year, that puts us in the top 40 of all payment processors in the country, which includes your big box banks and those type of aspects. And so CodaPay, it's been around for 30 years, essentially is a banking as a service type company. Because we had such a significant base with, proprietary software in place, all of the risk aspects, we had teams in place how to do this, is probably a little bit easier for us to launch a banking as a service platform than maybe somebody starting it up from scratch because we had such a good base. But we branded our banking as a service 2.0 Cavenue. And so Cavenue has a unique name. When you look at CodaPay, you got to grab the URLs and the websites, and it's always difficult. So Cavenue is actually, it's the term UNIVAC spelled backwards. UNIVAC apparently was like one of the first software providers long before probably, Joe, your and I's time. But that's where we came up with the name. But it's an embedded, platform to help businesses integrate into banking. And so mostly we focus a little bit more on the payment space just because of that's our expertise in the push and the pull of money. So both on the debit, credit, and ACH. We've been live with one of our first partners already. a national platform called Raisin, which is high yielding savings account marketplace, and we've been the transaction bank to help facilitate those transactions. But cool thing about CodaPay, it's a white labeled company. We're built into a lot of other people's platforms, which is very fun. But it's given us some unique capabilities, both to enhance our treasury management experience with a lot of our customers, but also it's given us a nice revenue stream as well as some access to deposits. That being said, we've been very methodical with launching banking as a service, just because we've read all of the cease and desist and all of the issues out there that have gotten some banks in trouble. And so early on, we invested heavily in compliance and risk experts, as well as software that would help us with that. And so essentially we used everybody that had some missteps as a playbook of what not to do. And we're just wanting to make sure that we keep it very conservative, do things the right way, and make sure that everything that happens on the CodaPay and Cavenue side is on the up and up. That's for sure. But it's been a little bit of a crawl, walk, run approach. But it's been very exciting. We're still in the early stages. We're working on building out our second Cavenue platform as we speak. Hopefully we'll have a year-end launch, but it's been fun to see the capabilities that CodaPay has given us, and then that's dovetailed into what we're doing with Cavenue.
No, it's incredible. I mean, just listening to you talk about the numbers there. I mean, just $100 billion in volume. I mean, I mean, for a bank of your size, I mean, that's amazing. And I think you hit the nail right on the head when you said we punch very above our weight class, which I think it's just amazing. But
We
again,
have a great team of experts. Our chief payments officer he's actually an examiner in his first part of his life, I guess, and then kind of went into the tech and the payment space. So Trent Sorby, our chief payments officer, a great person, kind of leading that charge along with our CodaPay and our Cavenue individuals. But I think having that regulatory compliance background early on, really helped him formulate, hey, here's maybe how we should build something out going forward.
yeah, no, absolutely. And I think this is a great segue into my next question, which was basically, and you kind of touched on this a little bit, given what has transpired with the failure of Synapse Financial Technologies and kind of regulators taking another look at the BAS model, did you guys learn anything from just watching that from afar and seeing how that unfolded, and maybe some things that you guys took away from that, or maybe said, hey, we can maybe change some things up, or did you guys just feel very confident in the way that you had established everything, and like you said, all the compliance and everything that was set up there? How did you feel as that whole thing started to unfold?
I'd say we were very deliberate, also very cautious, just because we felt that, banking as a service, could be built on a great foundation. And how can we, deliver that trust that a community bank can offer, really the relationship type aspects that community banks are so proud of. How can we do things right for the long term? But as you said, obviously there's risk there. I mean, you need to know what you're doing. And, we really focused on, how do we have control? How do we control the general ledger? Hey, if you're going to work with us on our Cavenue or CodaPay platform, you are going to do it our way, just because we want to make sure that we, stay within, regulatory guidelines, make sure it's within our risk appetite. So I would say, yes, I mean, we studied, had to a lot of conferences, read a lot of, things online. We have experts within those fields on the compliance side. As I mentioned, we've invested pretty heavy in experts and people, just to make sure that they're keeping, call it tight oversight on all of those aspects, because, what happened with, Synapsis and some others out there, we definitely don't want to have that same experience. We've probably also been a little bit early in also working with our regulators, keeping them apprised of what, we're planning to either do, roll out, or here's what we're thinking about. Just from more of a partnership perspective, because we're all in a regulatory environment, and so I mean, you want to make sure that you're doing things the right way, whenever humanly possible. So I think that strong compliance, hopefully it not only protects all banks, but also protects us, protects our customers, protects those clients and communities. And so to me, yes, if I had to sum it up, we were very deliberate and cautious. That's for sure.
No, and I think that's a great point, Peter. And I think that there's some banks out there that I would describe it more as dabbling in the
Yeah.
BAS business, and I think that if you're just dabbling in it, again, you probably ran into some issues because you probably didn't have as deep of a bench, so to speak, as you guys have in terms of your employees and talent, and they probably didn't have the history that you guys have with the development of these products over the last, like you said, 20, 30 years. So yeah, so again, I think that maybe we're in a situation now where we're kind of, you're kind of getting away from the banks that are really serious about that business versus the ones that are, like you said, are just kind of dabbling it a little bit. But we'll see. We'll see. Like I said, we'll see how all that plays out over time. But your bank, no doubt, sounds like that. You guys kind of have it covered, and you sound like you're in a great position to just continue carrying forward with those products and services. And it doesn't sound like you guys are really have a whole lot of concern, and you guys are pretty comfortable with what you're doing.
Well, I'm going to knock on wood. Like I said, it's going to be driven by the talented team members that we have in place, and really leaning on their level of experience and expertise, and making sure that we're doing things right for both FIBT and our risk appetite, as well as our customers, and keeping them safe and secure, and ultimately achieving the goals for both parties. I guess just that mutually beneficial relationship for sure.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Okay, so we discussed earlier about the family history of your bank, and you're fourth generation in the business. So can you tell us a little bit about, on a personal side, like, can you tell us a little bit about your maybe personal background, how you kind of ended up starting out in the business and kind of making your way up to now the CEO role?
Yeah, no, it definitely didn't happen overnight. That's for sure. As much as a lot of people probably think so. So, growing up in Western North Dakota, our family had both farming and ranching at the time, as well as banking. So I grew up, kind of, doing a little bit of the working cattle thing, going branding, helping out on the farm. In the early 2000s, my mom essentially gave my dad an ultimatum. Was like, hey, you either need to go banking or go farming. Like, which one's it going to be? Because like this isn't sustainable as a family. Fortunately for us, my dad leaned more into the banking side and really saw our company take off. But I started working in the bank in June of 2000. So I started working as a teller, 25 plus years ago now. And that was a great experience because it gave me the opportunity. Well, I should say I started working in the bank previous to that. That was the first time I actually collected $6 an hour. So I was getting paid to work in the bank besides, carrying chairs and, the honey-do list that all of us probably get. But I started working in the bank as a teller. Had a great experience getting to run transactions, interact with clients. After that, I did a little stint more of a loan associate, reading loan files, filing UCCs. Started kind of getting some customer interaction. Did a stint at the time as a computer room, ran proof. We don't even do that kind of stuff anymore. Really early recognized that my personality is a little bit more business development, not necessarily back office computer room stuff. And then when I got into college, I started working with our CFO at the time and learning more of the corporate accounting aspects of our business, general ledgers. I started helping with call reports, and that was very insightful. So I went out to college. I was a banking and financial economics major. When I graduated from college, moved to one of our larger markets at the time, so Fargo-Moorhead, which is right on the border of North Dakota, Minnesota. Wanted to get that commercial lending experience. Great timing. I started full time in January of 2008. So my first day on the job, unfortunately, I had to go to a sheriff's sale where we took back an unfinished condo project. To my dad's credit, he assigned me and one of my other coworkers, said, hey, you're taking this project over. You need to complete the condos and you need to sell it. And so early on, I got to work on a lot of workout credits. So I probably crammed about 10 years worth of banking into about a 3-year period, which at the time, I don't think I really appreciated, but looking back now, invaluable experience for sure. And so, kind of came up through the business banking ranks, ultimately became our market president, oversaw a few offices. And then I took over the role of chief retail banking officer and oversaw retail across our footprint, ascended to president, and started doing a little bit more of the overall footprint. And then ultimately, as of January 1, seated into the role of CEO after my dad was in that role for roughly 35 years. And so very honored to carry on the banking family tradition for sure. But again, it's really fun to be in a family business. We love being a privately held family banking business, that's for sure, just because I think being privately held has allowed us to make longer term decisions. We get to think a little further out. It's allowed us to make deeper investments into things such as CodaPay or Cavenue, and we can be a little bit more patient. So it's been really fun. I'm a huge believer in culture, love banking, love coming to work every day, love that business development type aspect. So if at all possible, if I can be out of the office, meeting clients, touring their business, prospecting, that's my favorite part of the job. That's for sure.
Nice. Oh, I love it, Peter. I absolutely love it. And I find it, so you'll probably find this interesting. So not only did we both start in banking the same year, we started in the same month. I too started working in banking in June of 2000. That's pretty wild. I'm hearing you, I'm listening to you say this, and I'm just like, that's amazing. So yeah, I literally started working in, bank branch in June of 2000 while I was in college, and did that for a little while. And then I graduated from college. The bank offered me a job working as a credit analyst on the commercial side of the bank. And again, what was also really interesting is that, so I got put through like a more formal credit training program for about 9 months. And as part of that experience, I had to go work in the workout department for the bank. And it's, very similar to the process that you went through. And I think that there is no better learning experience for a banker than to have to go do workout, because you learn how quickly loans go bad. You learn why they go bad. You get a chance to kind of look back, and you get to play armchair quarterback, so to speak, and you get to look back and say, something that may seem obvious at the time you're looking at it was not obvious at the moment when you made the loan. And again, analyzing that stuff is so important, because it gives you great insight into how you should be doing things on the front end. And it gets involved in the whole like 5 C's of credit, and, controlling the credit, and collateral and cash flow, and just making sure that you're doing everything the right way, and dotting crossing the T's and dotting the I's, and all that. And so again, I don't think there's a better learning experience for bankers out there than to go through some, hey, go collect on a loan, go work out a bad loan. It'll give you great insight into just the business and how things run and how they should run, as opposed to what can happen if you don't do it right. So so again, great stuff there. Great.
No, I think you nailed it. Like, I did graduate school of banking, and I've done some of those commercial lending schools, like the 3 C's, as you mentioned. But like you said, getting hands-on crucial conversations, like crucial conversation experience, like I said, that is really probably what really crafted just the ability to, navigate more of those challenging aspects that happen to us. I mean, it happens in banking, happens in any industry. Like I said, I love all of the, the other schooling type aspects, but the workout stuff for sure, like it just kind of forces you into the deep end, and it's a little bit sink or swim. But like I said, at the time, I probably didn't appreciate it, but looking back now, invaluable experience, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we're going to get into our last couple wrap-up questions here. So one of my favorite questions that I ask of everyone that I interview is, do you have a favorite business-related movie or a favorite business book?
So I have both, actually. I mean, I thought you'd go with like Tommy Boy, one of the favorite ones, but business related for sure. I'll say, Wolf of Wall Street's great. Plus it's just entertaining, so I love that one. As you can kind of tell, I like a little bit more of the sales aspect. So Glengarry Glen Ross, ABC, Always Be Closing, his sales contests, those are fantastic. Even the show like Wall Street, I'll say, like, a lot of those movies this reference, you're not exactly showing in high school or college classes. Probably there's some pieces there you might have to cut out, but they're definitely entertaining. Book wise, traditionalist, good to great. Jim Collins, I think, is a great baseline everybody should read. That being said, two of my other favorites, Ryan Holiday, The Obstacle is the Way. He's a Stoic, has the Daily Stoic, great guy. I've actually been able to interact and meet with him a few times. And then one that's a little bit out there that probably not as many people have heard about, Make Your Bed, Admiral William McRaven, kind of talks about, start every day with a victory, make your bed. Huge fan of that. Like, I think it was probably my mom's favorite book, and that just kind of translated to, all of us kids. So I make my bed every day because of that. Because look, at least I started out with one victory on the day. So great book if you guys haven't read it.
Oh, I think those are absolutely fantastic recommendations. I mean, from the movie side of it, yeah, if you've never seen Glengarry Glen Ross, highly recommend you go see that. I mean, obviously, Alec Baldwin steals the show with that kind of just that 15. He's just in it for the movie for what, 10, 15 minutes. But
Yeah.
that one scene that he does, he steals the movie in that one scene. But it's a classic, kind of sales culture movie. And great. If anybody has not seen that, I highly recommend it. And then some of the books that you recommended were absolutely spot on. I mean, just what was it? I forget. This is the way, or
Obstacles the way, Ryan
the
Holiday.
obstacle is the way. Yeah, Ryan Holiday. Yep.
I could go off forever. Like, we have a great internal team here and like Mike Toyas and my brother, they're a little bit of our internal philosophy department. And so they have some great book recommendations. And I have more books sitting on my shelf that I'm trying to get to than I can get through in a week or a day. That's for sure. So
I have the same problem. But I will, for our podcast audience out there, I will tell them, I do a number of book reviews on the channel, and those are definitely some books that I will be getting to at some point here in the next couple of months or so, because those are great books. I love the messages of those books, and undoubtedly we will touch on those. So just to
that's
put
fun.
that out there for the
John
for the
Maxwell
audience,
too is usually fantastic. So 360 leader, all the John Maxwell stuff is great.
Yeah, no, undoubtedly, absolutely. So, okay, Peter. So let me just ask you this: if anybody wants to contact or follow you, what is the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, no, appreciate you asking. So you can find me. So First International Bank and Trust. So FIBT.com. We have all the socials, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, those kind of aspects. You can search for FIBT or First International Bank. Pretty active out on LinkedIn, so you can find me on LinkedIn under Peter Stenehjem. So yeah, please feel free to reach out. Always happy to talk banking. Huge fan of the community banking industry and want to continue to see it be successful. That's for sure.
Fantastic. Oh, hey, Peter, I can't thank you enough for taking a few minutes to come on with us. I really appreciate you just sharing your story, your family story, the bank story. And I think it's phenomenal. And I think our listeners are going to love hearing about this.
Well, thanks. Well, again, appreciate the opportunity. It's always fun to, talk banking and talk about our bank specifically, for sure.
Perfect. Yeah. Thanks again. I will always say this. I hope you come back and join us again soon.
No, would love that opportunity. That'd be fun. Well, we can do book reviews or just talk general banking as a service. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it. Well, thank you very much, Peter. All right, everyone. Well, that was Peter Stenehjem having come on to join us today to tell his story and his bank story, and what a great story it was. And with that being said, I'm going to wrap up by saying if you like this episode, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe, as that really helps the channel. Remember, we are on Rumble, YouTube, and all major podcast platforms. Please be sure to leave your comments down below, as I love getting back to everybody. And as always, make sure to check out some of the other content on the channel. I thank you for listening. I hope everyone has a great day out there, and I will see everyone again real soon. Thanks a lot.